Herzlich willkommen zur 19. Ausgabe von Rechtsgespräch, dem Podcast über Innovationen im Rechtsmarkt und Zugang zum Recht. Am Mikrofon Kurt Brückmann. Ich freue mich heute auf zwei Gäste, die wieder einmal helfen werden, den Blick zu weiten. Da ist zunächst Tomilola Adajena. Tomilola ist eine Fintech-Start-Up-Gründerin aus Nigeria. Wir sprechen über ihren erfolgreichen und ausgezeichneten Weg über Fintech und Zugang zum Recht und über die besonderen Herausforderungen einer Frau in der Tech-Start-Up-Branche. Meine zweite Rechtsgesprächspartnerin ist Andrea Lindblom. Sie arbeitet in der schwedischen Justizverwaltung und organisiert dort den digitalen Wandel mit Hilfe von juristischem Wissen, Legal Design und viel Geduld. Mein Lesetipp: The Demand for Civil Justice in Germany, an Empirical Investigation von Roberto Ippoliti und Anne Sanders. Toll wäre es, wenn ihr helft, diesen Podcast unter den vielen Angeboten noch sichtbarer zu machen. Das geht ganz einfach durch ein Abonnement des Rechtsgesprächs-Podcasts und durch eure 5-Sterne-Bewertung in der Apple Podcast-App. Bevor wir einsteigen, kommt jetzt ein Hinweis auf den Sponsor dieses Podcasts, Juris, das Rechtsportal. Juris, das Rechtsportal, bietet als führender Anbieter digitaler Rechtsinformationen umfassenden Zugriff auf juristische Fachliteratur, Gesetze und aktuelle Entscheidungen. Mit Juris arbeiten Sie stets aktuell, rechtssicher und effizient. Jetzt informieren und gratis testen. Unter juris.de. Das war Werbung. Dieses Rechtsgespräch führe ich mit einer Start-up-Gründerin, die ich auf einer Konferenz des The Hague Institute for the Innovation of Law kennengelernt habe. Das ist die Organisation meines Gastes Sam Möller aus Folge 13. Dort hat sie ihre damals noch verhältnismäßig neue Idee in der Innovating Justice Challenge gepitcht und die Jury überzeugt. Sie hat diesen Start-up-Wettbewerb nämlich gewonnen. Mich hat ihre Präsentation auch schwer beeindruckt. Mein Gast kommt aus Nigeria und sie ist keine Rechtsanwältin, sondern eine ehemalige Investmentbankerin. Streng genommen ist ihre Geschäftsidee auch kein Legal Tech Tool. Man könnte sagen, sie schafft mit ihrer Firma erst die Grundlage dafür, dass Menschen Zugang zum Recht bekommen können. Mein Gast hat das Fintech-Start-Up Bankly gegründet. Welcome, Tomilola Adajena. Great to have you as my guest in this episode of the Rechtsgespräch-Podcast.
Thank you, Cord.
Tomilola, let's start with a elevator pitch, if you don't mind. What is Bankly in 60 seconds?
Bankly is helping to digitize cash to the informal sector and protect them from fraud, protect them from theft, and protect them from the lack of security that happens when you save with an informal person that you don't know what can happen to him. So in a nutshell, Bankly is protecting the informal sector and people who are not financially literate from the issues around theft and fraud.
Thank you very much. That was perfect. And it should definitely make my listeners curious to learn more about you and your business idea. Can you give us some background against which you came up with your Bankly idea? What is the situation in Nigeria when you use terms like informal sector? Explain it to a Western European who maybe doesn't know the situation in your country.
Thank you, Cord. So, in Nigeria today, we have about only 40 million people who are banked, who have access to a formal bank account. And we have another 60 million who are excluded. What that means is that people would typically, in the absence of being able to keep your money in a bank for safety and all of that, people would typically, in the absence of that, use an informal banking system.
What is that?
It's called the Ajo or the Esusu system. Now, when you're talking about traders, farmers, people, artisans, they get paid daily in cash. And because they get paid daily in cash, they end up keeping their money under their mattress, inside their stores, or sometimes even working at night, home carrying cash, and they're exposed to theft, fraud. And so they started saving in a system called the Ajo or the Esusu system. And this system also exposes them to security issues. And that's why Bankly is built to protect them.
Could you elaborate a bit on this Esusu system? What is that like? How does that work?
So Esusu system, or the thrift collection system in English, has been existing for over 5 decades in Nigeria, or it was imported. It's actually very popular around sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what that means is that if I'm a trader and I'm in a maybe farmer's market, people come to me daily and pay me in cash. Now, at the end of the day, sometimes I just want to put something away. Maybe I don't want to eat into my capital. Sometimes there have been cases we've encountered that women traders, maybe they are in abusive relationship, and when they get to their house, the husband collects all the money or the partner collects everything. So they want to keep something away and say, oh, this is all I have. I have only 10 pounds or 10 euros, and keep another 10 euros away for more like a psychological protection. So what they do is there's an agent who goes around the market collecting those amounts, recording it in a notebook. Then they also have a piece of paper, like a card, where they will record that. Let's say Cord is the agent, I'm the trader in the market, I'm in the local farmer's market. Cord comes daily and I tell Cord and say, I want to save 10 euros every day. And he says, okay. So he comes to me, I give him 10 euros in cash. He writes down that Tomilola gave me 10 euros. I also wrote that I gave Cord 10 euros, we walk away. So then Cord comes every day or every week and collects 10 euros from me for the next 3 months. Now, the day I need my money, because maybe I want to expand my shop or I want to buy produce into my shop, Cord has collected from hundreds of us in the same market, thousands or hundreds of thousands in euros, and suddenly Cord is no longer anywhere to be found, because Cord suddenly realized, I have this much money, why should I give it back? I can leave this city, leave this country, and never come back. So they are exposed to that theft, which is fraudulent. And there have been cases whereby this agent dies because there's no succession planning, there's no formal institution. It's almost like borrowing someone money, and if the person dies, sometimes you lost your investment. So they save with this individual, but there's no, this individual, you're at his mercy. There's no system, there's no law, there's no legal framework in place to protect you from losses and theft.
That, of course, makes me curious. What did you do to change this? What is Bankly actually?
Bankly then decided that, there's a way we can fix this. Now, the first is technology can fix this. But we also understand that technology is just an enabler to help do something better where people already are doing it. So the first thing we did is we helped to convert. People have mobile phones. Whether they have smartphones or have access to the internet is another thing. But they have feature phones. They have the mobile inclusion in Africa, in Nigeria, is very deep. We have close to 80% to 85%.
So even those people who are maybe unbanked do have a mobile phone.
They have a mobile phone, even if it doesn't have internet, or they can access a podcast like this. What we then did is, what if we built out an agent network that is trusted, but the money doesn't sit with this agent network. So it doesn't matter if Cord is with Bankly or Cord lives. It's almost like a branch network. If you are with a bank, let's say you're with, let me use my Santander, and then you go to a branch to save money and you move to another branch. You're not forced to go to the same branch to access your fund or to bank with them. The branch network is almost singular. Whatever you do in this branch, you can do in another branch. Now that's what Bankly then built. So an agent network that can help to digitize the cash, but the cash is saved within a formal bank account. So it doesn't matter if the agent dies, you will still access your money. It doesn't matter if you were saving in a particular city like Lagos, and then you find yourself in a northern city in like Kano in Nigeria. All you need to do is be able to have access to this agent and you have your money. The second thing we did is, instead of recording in a notebook, we send in an SMS. All of the issues around maybe the notebook is missing or someone changed something. In technology, it's almost like before you go back to change what an SMS that's been sent 3 weeks ago, there's no lies there. So we started sending them SMS. For those who have access to a smartphone, they can even check their balance using USSD technology and mobile apps. So we are making sure that there's an inclusiveness. If you have a smartphone, fantastic. You can use an app. If you don't have a smartphone, no problem. Using USSD, it's almost the way you dial a *555 to check your balance on a mobile phone.
Right.
Where turning their phone into a mobile wallet.
So is Bankly a bank?
Bankly ultimately is a bank. Now, what we started with is we strongly believe that the way banking, financial services is seen and experienced to serve these vulnerable people has to be different. And the first thing is that the cost structure has to be different. The second thing is that it's mission oriented, it's impact. Now, you could look at it and say at the back end of it, financial services is financial services. So you might look at it as a bank, but at the front end of it, these people even do not trust banks. So we have already been able to build the impact side to say, you know what, let's protect these people. It's beyond just trying to make a typical bank is more about shareholders' value. Yeah, we're starting out with making sure that how do we protect these people and grow with them. So we're looking from 3 SDGs. The first one we're looking is no poverty, because if we're not able to digitize their cash, they have no access to credit. Because of the informal way, they can't access loans from the formal system, from banks. Now they go get loans from people I call the loan sharks. Sometimes at 50%, 60%, almost 100% sometimes per annum. So you can imagine that the cycle of poverty continues. So we focusing on the fact that how do we help these people grow, and using their finance to help transform their lives is what part of what we are looking to do with Bankly.
So do I understand you correctly that you say the data that you collect about the people actually helps them transfer from the informal to the formal sector?
Absolutely, 100%.
That's very interesting, because in Western Europe, we very often look at data from the perspective of privacy rights, and we try to prevent banks from using data. So it's a very interesting perspective to see that the knowledge that you get about your customers actually doesn't threaten them, but might even help them to transfer to the formal sector.
Absolutely. But I always also have to add that it's almost like you're bringing data that wasn't within the system into the system. So that helps to be able to serve them with health insurance, credit. However, there's still a responsible use of that data. After you've brought them into, it is very critical to not say because they are vulnerable people, because they are less financially literate, to not have a responsibility to them to protect them. And that's very critical. Yeah.
Tomilola, let's talk about money. You are not an NGO, so Bankly has to earn a living. First, I saw that you actually received seed funding just lately. I think it was in March, $2 million. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Cord.
But on the long run, what do your customers have to pay? How do you sustain Bankly with the customers?
Thank you for that, Cord. So, like you rightly said, Bankly is not an NGO. Bankly is a for-profit organization. However, I think that I strongly believe that an ethical side to capitalism, there's an ethical side to entrepreneurship. Now, what that means is what Bankly is doing is looking across financial institutions in Nigeria. A lot of them are built at a cost structure that is not able to pass on cost savings to the customers. So the cost structure is very critical to be able to serve these people very affordably. Now, what Bankly has done is that make sure you're lean. The lean model is important. Make sure that you don't have any much overhead. Make sure that you're able to reach out to them with people like them. Keeping that lean model, you don't need branches. You're just using human beings to do some form of community banking. And by keeping those costs low and the overhead low, we don't need to go on private jets and all of those, business class. Keeping the cost low means that you can pass on this cost savings to the customers, but at the same time, keep a decent margin for you to be a very profitable business as the time goes on. So that's the balance that is necessary in serving these people.
That sounds quite disruptive. What's the reaction of your competitors? Who are the main competitors in your country?
It's interesting because when we started, there were not as much, but the competitors have increased. I'll say there are 3 major types of competitors in the market right now. The first are the banks themselves. They are realizing that, there's so much to do here, and they are trying to capture the system. But what we found that is it's easier as a tech startup because you've been from the ground up, you've been built to serve these people. They haven't been built in a way to, like I mentioned, the cost structure. The cost structure remains. They are pushing, but I believe that because we are more agile, we understand there's a research side. Bankly was formed through a research with Axion.org. Axion.org, the impact venture capital arm, came to Nigeria, funding in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, and said there is an issue with financial inclusion in Nigeria. How do we bring people together to do the groundwork, to do the research that is necessary to solve this problem? Back to the motivation, I was wondering, why do we have cigarette companies coming fresh into Nigeria and getting to the last mile? Why do we have alcohol companies? It's not like it's bad getting to the last mile, but when it comes to access to finance, we are not able to get this product to those people. We're not able to get the services to the right people, but we're able to get them cigarette. We're able to get them alcohol. In fact, they're able to get guns, but they are not able to get access to finance. And that's where I was curious and joined the research. I'll also say, we do have the telcos who are pushing to get the required license to do what we do. They haven't been, they've only been able to get the super agent license, which is something to help them to build the human branches, but the ability to be a bank has not been given to them. So should they get it, chances are slim, but should they get it, that comes, they then become a competitor as well.
Is the traditional Isuzu system a competitor? What do the money collectors in the villages and towns say about Bankly?
The traditional Isuzu collectors, funny, are not competitors. They actually see trust is being eroded and they are losing market. So what they are willing to do is to join us. They're willing to become one of our agents. However, they know that the money is no longer within their control. The money has to be with the licensed, regulated financial institution, which Bankly just became. The second thing they understand is that the customers are getting more sophisticated. They're excited to see that they can get an SMS. They don't want to keep a notebook any longer. So technology is needed to do that, to be, I am in front of you, you give me cash, I punch something on my phone, and then you instantly get an SMS validating that, oh, I just got 10 euros from court. That need for the technology, because of the sophistication of the customers now, slight increase in literacy means that they have been pushed out of the market. So they know that better to join them. If you can't win them, you join them. So they are lesser competitors, but more enablers.
Before we come to the last set of questions, is there maybe a success story of a customer which you have in mind, which you are proud of, and which you want to share with our listeners?
Yes. There was this lady who was brought to us by an agent. And the story, in fact, she wrote a little story. What she said was that she first heard about Bankly and she didn't take it seriously and kept on saving with our thrift collector, with the Isuzu agent. A few months later, he ran away with her money and they brought her very disheartened and everything. And so first thing we did was we were able to help to recover some of those funds. And after the recovery of those funds, we then onboarded her having an account. But the best part was how she was able to access credit very affordably to open a new shop, to expand our trade. The second part, so there are two people we are impacting here. The agents themselves, unemployment is a big thing in Nigeria. Another SDG that we are pushing is SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. And the reason for that is that we realize that people need to be able to do good work. And in good work means that they are able to earn an income. I look at access to justice and I'm like, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the bottom of it is physiological need. At the second is security. Access to justice, to knowing that this is my right as a citizen. This is what I demand from the government. Part of what the issue in Nigeria, where we have bad governance, where a lot of things are not working, is because people are at the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. there's little you can tell a man that is hungry. He doesn't care about which president because he just wants to eat. So being able to get these people working, onboarding them as agents, as micro-entrepreneurs, giving them the working capital. So we have women we onboard, and then they become our agents within the communities they are in. They are earning money. They are able to also help. There's now, when you're done with physiological security, there's a feeling of pride you feel where you are the point of influence within your community, meaning that I am someone who had no job. Then you encountered Bankly, then you were given working capital, you were trained to be an agent, then you now are able to even empower people within your community, meaning that you're helping to save them from fraud, you're helping to give them access to finance affordably. It's really critical. That's the story of Aisha, one of the ladies that we've worked with within in northern Nigeria in a state called Kano, and that's one of my biggest proud stories.
Tomilola, it's very interesting because it's interesting to hear a non-lawyer's definition of access to justice, because we very often think that access to justice is just access to courts. And I understand that your definition of access to justice is a lot broader because it starts a lot earlier. I said in my German language introduction that you are a former investment banker. You have a lot to do with regulatory framework and legal framework, though. Is there a lawyer in your staff?
I actually have a law firm on retainer. So I don't have, I have a law firm fully on retainer. So I don't have a full-time, but I have a team of 4 that helps. Okay. But if I was to come again, if I was reincarnated, I would be a lawyer. Now, not because I get told by friends that you should have been a lawyer. I'll say that I like access to justice, or the legal justice as a system, as a sector. I know I talk about Nigeria a lot because I stay and live here and I'm faced with the challenges every day. I have an option to, a lot of more the upper middle class Nigerians have the option to relocate to other countries, and a lot of them are doing that because they are tired. But I run a business here. I want to do this and I don't want to leave. So it's frustrates me when I see certain things, but I would like to say something. Looking at one key thing that needs to work in Nigeria for Nigerians to work is the justice system. It is the justice system. When people know that it doesn't matter who I am, it doesn't matter how much I have, if the common man can access justice, then the system, one of the things I say is that the reward system in Nigeria is upside down. What it means that you get rewarded for doing the bad thing and get punished for doing the good. Now, anywhere the justice system in any country is to create fairness and to set the scale and to actually also set the measure of behavior. This is what is right. This is what is wrong, because it's a punitive and reward system. If you have a contract with me and I renege on an agreement, you take me to court and then the court system says, court is right, Tomilola is wrong, pay damages to court, and I would learn that I paid dearly for doing the wrong thing. I wouldn't do it again. Now, it's unfortunate that most Nigerians don't even know all of this, and they don't know what their rights are. They don't know that they have access to a lawyer. They don't know that they can actually get a public defender. Right. Who is the public defender anyway? I don't even know. And that's part of why access to justice itself, I realized that we had to step backwards to start working on this for people to really know what their rights are and worry about it. Sorry, I went off track, your question.
You didn't at all, because you gave the perfect step for my last set of questions. I did want to ask a few questions about yourself. And one of the questions I noted was, where do you get your inspiration? And it looks like you really got your inspiration from looking at reality. But how would you answer that question?
I'll say I get my inspiration from 2 things. First, I would just talk about myself. And I woke up one day and realized I wanted to do important work. I realized I wanted to wake up excited about the work I'm doing. I knew it would be challenging, but I just wanted to wake up every morning and know that, and go to bed knowing that I didn't spend my days as a Nigerian complaining about what another person should be doing. What motivates me is being able to sleep at night, knowing that I've done my part. As much as I advocate and speak about what needs to be done in the country, I'm not just talking, I'm doing my part while we are hoping for a much larger scale impact or change or policies that help the common man. So that's one side of the motivation. The second thing is also knowing that no one is going to come and save me. I come from a lower middle class family. I finished from the University of Lagos. I went for my MBA 3 years later, self-sponsored. I didn't really have access to credit. I had to keep saving for 3 years, knowing that I wanted to get a better exposure. I wanted to get more education. And I had to save because I knew that right after my college education, there was nowhere that I had any parents to pay for this. Now, when you know that you want to be able to help, you want to be able to make an impact, you don't want to, you know that you need to do the work. You need to do the work to first lift yourself out of poverty. So you can then lift others out of poverty. You first have to walk the way before you can then tell others that this is the way, this is to make it easier for another woman and or to make it easier for another young Nigerian with dreams without the access to a lot of things that the Western young person or the Western youth do have. So that's the two things that motivate me.
I totally understand your answer, but I guess there are ways to make an impact that are a lot easier than going into the tech space as a young female. Would you say there were special challenges you had as a female tech founder in the tech space?
Absolutely. You're throwing me back. I think when you are young and female, you face several challenges, especially in a country like Nigeria. Now, the first one is to be taken seriously at all. It was difficult to have access to the partnerships, to the people I needed to speak with, the banks, the telcos, the telcos, I mean the telecom companies like AT&T, Orange, in our case, MTN, Airtel. You go for a meeting and they look at you and say, they don't even take you seriously. But I want to say the things I did, I understood what I was up against and learned to, I'll use the word, hack the system. So I remember having, imagine if Cord is my friend and I was in Germany and I know that I want to get a meeting with a company and I don't think if I go for the meeting alone, they would just look at me and sometimes not deliberately, but there's this implicit bias because you're used to seeing men grown, coming in nice suits or probably packing luxury cars, coming to talk business. And so I would tell Cord, please join me in this meeting. So I had this amazing friend called Uyoyo, and Uyoyo would go for meetings with me, even though he had no shares in Bankly. He would just go for meetings with me, take the word and make sure that everything looks like we are a team. And because of his presence, I had the access and the hearing that was necessary. One, I remember going for a meeting then I had a chief technology officer. He's of course a grown man with 2 kids, which was what they like to see. I went to a meeting with him. The meeting went very well until it was time to give them our business cards. I gave them my business card and they realized I was the CEO. So probably thought I was his executive assistant or whatever. Joe was just very shy. His chief of staff was just very brilliant. We were meeting with 4 men, with just to myself and himself. And the minute I gave my card, they looked at it and said, "You are the CEO?" I said, "Yes." And they laughed. There was a laughter. And the next, the CEO looked at me and said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "I'm here. I believe so." I walked out of the meeting and I asked my CTO, I said, was it just me or there was a little bit of condescension when they saw my card? He said, "No, Tommy, I must tell you, it was not a little bit. They were downright rude. They never responded to our emails right after. Never. Just because the minute they realized that I was the captain of the ship, it just seemed like, this girl, no, there can't be anything here." So the third thing also is you also have unfortunately, you have a situation where people don't understand sexual power dynamics. So if I walk into you and you are in a position of power as a regulator or as a big bank, and knowing that I have to always be careful not to make sure that any of my conversation, even though I can be friendly, can be misconstrued as a green light. I have to be careful how to message, how to follow up with you, how to respond to your message. I think there are just certain things that you have to worry about as a female founder that someone else wouldn't have to, or maybe you have to just make sure, is this proper? Am I sending the wrong messages? Is he going to take this as green light that, I'm interested in him in a more outside of a professional way? And all of this is going on in your head while you have to run a business, while you have to deal with a team, while you have to deal with licenses, and it's a lot. So I think female founders have to worry about certain things that male founders would never have to worry about. But I also want to say that I believe that male founders also probably have things they have to worry about that female founders. I don't know. I've never walked in their shoes. So I can only speak from my experiences, but that's not belittling the challenges that male founders also have to do. I'm just sharing, giving them an insight on what I have to think about while I'm dealing with others within the space. Yeah. So those are the three major things: being taken seriously, being not ignored or being condescending treated, and thirdly, just that your brain is continuously checkmating your actions, trying to make sure that you don't send the wrong message and you need to earn your respect. You have a longer time to earn your respect.
Tomilola Adajena, thank you very much for sharing your story, and thanks for taking time for this inspiring Rechtsgespräch conversation. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Cord. It was a pleasure too.
Mein nächster Gast ist Verwaltungsdirektorin am Bezirksgericht im schwedischen Helsingborg. Bezirksgerichte sind in Schweden Eingangsinstanz, im Wesentlichen für Zivil- und Strafsachen, so ähnlich wie unsere Amts- und Landgerichte. Es gibt 48 davon. Sie ist Juristin und hat Legal Design Thinking studiert. Was das ist, bespreche ich übrigens auch in einer meiner Podcast-Folgen mit Astrid Kohlmeier. Mein Gast ist keine Richterin, sondern beschäftigt sich mit digitaler Transformation der Justiz. Weil sie das so erfolgreich macht, ist sie im letzten Jahr unter anderem mit dem European Women of Legal Tech Award ausgezeichnet worden. Welcome, Andrea Lindblom, to this episode of the Rechtsgespräch-Podcast.
Thank you very much.
I explained in my German language introduction, which I know you understood, that district courts in Sweden are a bit like a combination of our German Amts- und Landgerichte. So at your court, which is not a Supreme Court, you get to know a good cross-section of legal problems of people and businesses, don't you?
Yes, that's a very good description.
You describe yourself as an intrapreneur. You drive change in the court system from the inside. Where would you say are the biggest pain points in the administration of justice in Sweden right now?
I think we have a lot of challenges now in the legal industry and of course at the courts and in the courts. Everyone is talking about the development being so fast and digitalization transforming everything we do. And I really believe it does. But I think we're still struggling, everyone in the system, to figure out what comes next. Like if we can't continue to do things the way we have always done them, how should we do them? And I find that we right now are at the border where we have to start anew and find new ways to work and to operate, to improve.
What do you think needs to be changed most? Is it laws? It is administrative structures? Is it people's mindsets?
Probably everything a little bit.
Okay.
I think people's mindsets have to change. I think this time requires us to become more than just traditional lawyers. It's not enough anymore just to be a lawyer. You have to be interested in IT too. You have to be interested in user perspective. We need different mindsets. And I really think we also have to figure out what we want for a court to be in this digital age. I mean, everyone who is listening to this podcast knows this very debated Richard Susskind saying that the court is a service and not a place. And I think that's very interesting and a very interesting discussion, and that affects almost everything we do. Yeah, many things have to change.
Help us understand the state of digitalization and legal tech in Sweden before we come to design thinking and customer centrics, maybe in a European context. Where could one place Sweden?
I think we are very much in the beginning, especially at the courts. I mean, we have some virtual hearings, not very advanced systems, but we have some, especially now during the pandemic. But when it comes to, for example, using technology to enhance efficiency and work differently, for example, using AI tools or software robots, we're really almost not even getting started in the court system. And I don't think many courts in Europe are. I think we're very much in the beginning. Probably the business law firms have reached further than the courts.
Andrea, justice systems in the EU are very national. It's part of our legal cultures to be kind of parochial, some even say narrow-minded. How important is this European view for you and for Sweden?
I think the European view is very interesting and important here because Sweden is a very small country. And I think you really can tell that it is a very small country because
it's 10 million, roughly 10 million,
10
right?
million, but we only have one court administrative authority. So we are very dependent on that one authority to make all the right decisions on where to put its efforts and the resources to accelerate digitalization. Whereas in America, I know there are many different organizations with similar tasks, and we need more actors to work for this digitalization of the courts, for example, to drive each other.
I think that's a very good point, but from the perspective of somebody in Germany, which is a very federal country, we sometimes envy a system like yours where there is just one authority, because federalism in the best of all worlds is some kind of competition, but especially in digitalization, we sometimes feel that it is also hindering digitalization. But let us get to legal design, because I think that's one of your key issues and your key parts of your work. I read in one of your papers that you say something like, with legal design, you can make technology less frightening.
Yes.
What does that mean? And can you maybe give us an example?
What I mean by that is that I think it's very important that technology does not exist only for its own sake, that we should all agree that technology should be made for us, to be a tool for us to make something better. And quite often technology is considered to be complicated or maybe impossible to adjust. It's seen as something very static. And what I like about design thinking and this way of working with interdisciplinary teams, and why I think lawyers should be involved in development projects from the very start, is that I think we need to take some kind of more active role in getting things that work for us and that work for the people who are going to be using them.
So who is us in your perspective? Who are your customers of your design thinking? Is it legal professionals, or is it rather the people who actually seek access to the justice system?
Yeah, that depends, of course, what project I'm working on or what project we are talking about. Broadly speaking, when I talk about users, of course, I mean like the citizens who are coming to the court and using the court.
Right.
That's the most important thing to ensure that people trust the justice system. They are the most important users, of course. And I think that's really, really important to remember when you work at the court. But I mean, often court workers can be the users too. I mean, can be users of an IT system or a user of a process. It really depends what we're talking about.
So what kind of process can you actually use to integrate those people who are not legal professionals in a process of enhancing the court system? How can you make their perspective visible and heard?
I believe we could now, when many of our traditional paper processes are turning into digital services, one way that I believe is a good way is to launch these new tools and new services at an early stage and ask for feedback, and not to have this traditional way of launching when you think you're done and everything is perfect. Because in my experience, since development is so fast and technology is changing rapidly, everything, nothing really is done anymore. It's I love this saying within legal design that everything is a prototype. So launching new services and ways of doing things early and asking for feedback, and then also being prepared to adjust depending on the feedback you get. I think that's one way of ensuring that you're actually aiming right and that you're solving the problem you meant to solve.
Now, people, companies go to the courts to get something that in German we call Rechtssicherheit. It's a term that is difficult to translate to English, I always find.
It's the exact same term in Swedish.
Is it?
Yes, it's rättssäkerhet. It sounds almost exactly the same.
It does, doesn't it? I always find it difficult to try to explain it to an English audience because there's no concrete translation for this. Andrea, how do you react to the fact that people actually want this Rechtssicherheit and you say, well, what we can offer is prototypes?
I don't really see a contradiction in that, depending on what we talk about. But I'm talking about launching new e-services, for example, because I have seen the launch of really bad e-services where you haven't tested, where you thought you got it right, but you didn't test. So you thought you were really clear in your instructions and you thought you made a very nice sheet to fill out, but the user didn't really understand what you were asking for. And I don't think that's Rechtssicherheit. I think then people get really frustrated and think, why did they do like this? They should have known.
Okay. So we touched the courts you work for, and we talked about people and companies for whom the administration of justice actually works. I'm now curious about the lawyers, the private lawyers. In Sweden, I think that's a small but very fine group of legal professionals. If I'm not mistaken, there are only a bit less than 6,000 lawyers in Sweden compared to 160,000 lawyers in Germany. What is their contribution to modernization, digitization in the justice sectors? Are they rather drivers or are they preservers of the tried and true?
If I had to pick, I would say they are preservers. But there are, of course, many people that are lawyers that also are interested in the change and the future of our work, both young people and people that are not very new in their career. But I think more and more people are becoming interested in innovation and digitalization and these words that we see everywhere now.
Right. So who, if I didn't give you options, who would you say is the main driver for change?
In the legal industry?
In the legal industry, yes.
I would say like the people who write about these topics and the people who make podcasts like yourself and the people who are interested in this and not just keep the interest to themselves, but also have the ability to communicate their interest, and also the people who are good at, involving others, taking people along and arranging things. I think those people are the drivers of change.
Let's move to another topic, of course, related to the topics we talked about, to regulation in Sweden. You are probably aware of the controversies between the lawyer profession and non-lawyer legal tech companies in many jurisdictions. Do you have similar disputes in Sweden?
Yes, that is something that is being discussed. I think there is a rule for Swedish lawyers admitted to the bar that they can't have any other owners of a law firm than an actual lawyer. Right. So you can't have someone who is not a lawyer as a owner to a law firm. So these kinds of cross businesses that some people would like to have, that's complicated.
Do they exist in Sweden?
They have started to pop up, but I think it's still quite early.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that it's a big question and that it's broadly discussed.
Probably it's also the fact that Sweden is quite a small jurisdiction, that the big legal tech drivers or companies, rather look at other jurisdictions where there's just a bit more leverage, I guess. Let me ask you a question which seems unrelated, but maybe again it isn't. Sweden is the country with probably the lowest percentage of women in the lawyer profession. I haven't found an explanation for this. Maybe you know the explanation. My question, though, is, does this have an effect on the willingness of the profession to adapt and to modernize?
When you say that we have a lower percentage of women, are we talking about lower percentage of women who are admitted to the bar?
Sweden has 31% female lawyers. Germany, very similarly, has 34%. Denmark is quite low. Norway has around 40%. But countries in Southern Europe have a predominantly female profession, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I was quite surprised when you told me the numbers because I didn't know. But I mean, I have a very strong opinion that working at a big business law firm is not traditionally a very women's friendly job.
Right.
I mean, I have also worked at one of those firms and I have many colleagues and friends who have, and they tend to leave after 5, 6, 7, up to 10 years because they don't become partners. And I mean, then they often, if they go to work as a corporate counsel or if they don't work at a law firm anymore, they don't have to be members at the bar anymore. So then they disappear out of that statistic.
Thank you very much. Now, I understand that you have knowledge about the legal tech and innovation situation in Germany. I'm curious, what's your view on the German discussion on digitalization and legal tech? Anything you find especially interesting?
I wish I knew more, and I can imagine that in Germany you would have much more resources economically to put into legal tech or legal innovation than we do in Sweden, because this is still, maybe it's also because of the political discussion that innovation within the legal industry or innovation within the courts, that will not at the moment be a political interesting question for anyone. So no one will send us hundreds of millions, I guess, because there are other things that people care much more about.
I think you are right, but then what I kind of heard as a subtext from what you said, it's not only about money and economic power behind innovation, it's also something about mindset and culture.
And leadership.
And leadership, absolutely. So my final question to you, as somebody who actually managed to change things in your own country, what is your recipe for success when it comes to motivating actors in the profession? Or at least, what are the main ingredients for your recipe?
I don't know if I would dare to say that I have changed very much, but I have been trying to change some things for a few years now. I will say probably the same things as everyone else says, that it's about the mindsets and that it's about leadership. And I would really love it if we could have a stronger leadership within this whole field of innovation within the legal industry and the courts, because that is really a key factor for more change to happen.
Beautiful last sentence. Thanks, Andrea, for this view on the courts, on the lawyer profession, on the modernization of the administration of justice. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Am Ende dieser Folge steht wie immer ein Lesetipp. Dieses Mal geht es um das Themenfeld Rückgang der Eingangszahlen in der Ziviljustiz in Deutschland. Mit The Demand for Civil Justice in Germany, an Empirical Investigation haben der Wirtschaftswissenschaftler Roberto Ippoliti und die Rechtswissenschaftlerin Anne Sanders, beide sind LehrstuhlinhaberInnen an der Universität Bielefeld, eine Untersuchung vorgelegt, die ein bisschen versteckt in dem Journal International Review of Applied Economics erschienen ist. Sanders und Ippoliti suchen nach Treibern für den Rückgang der Eingangszahlen der Ziviljustiz, über den ich in diesem Podcast schon mit einer Reihe von Gästen gesprochen habe. Wir wissen, dass es zahlreiche Erklärungsversuche aus Alltagserfahrungswissen gibt. Wir wissen auch, dass es in Deutschland keine empirisch abgesicherten Erkenntnisse gibt über Rechtsberatungs- und Durchsetzungsbedarf, anders als in etwa 50 anderen Ländern, in denen es teilweise seit Jahrzehnten aufbauend auf einer international anerkannten Methodik sogenannte Unmet Legal Needs Studien gibt. Nur zur Erläuterung, was ist Kern dieser sozialwissenschaftlichen Unmet Legal Needs Forschung? Vor allem, dass sie die Binnenperspektive der Justiz verlässt, dass sie stark auf Befragungen derjenigen setzt, für die die Rechtspflege da ist, und dass sie nicht bei der Justiz Halt macht, sondern einen sehr weiten Blick auf staatliche und nichtstaatliche, formelle und informelle Streitlösungsangebote hat. Für die von Ihnen, für die von euch, die an diesen Themen interessiert sind, packe ich einen Überblick der OECD, das ist die Organisation für wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit und Entwicklung, zu Unmet Legal Needs Studien in die Shownotes. Außerdem sollte ich an dieser Stelle noch erwähnen, dass eine vom Bundesjustizministerium in Auftrag gegebene Studie zum Rückgang der Eingangszahlen bei den Zivilgerichten in Deutschland in den nächsten Jahren erscheinen wird. Wann genau, das wissen wir nicht, weil das BMJV bisher nur über den Start des Forschungsvorhabens berichtet hat und die Forscherinnen ansonsten wohl erstmal in Ruhe forschen lässt. Klar ist aber, die Fragestellung dieser Studie des BMJV ist zu eng, um als Unmet Legal Needs Studie durchzugehen, aber es ist zu hoffen, dass die Studienergebnisse nicht nur die Binnenperspektive der Justiz wiedergeben und dass die Studie zumindest nicht ganz unbeeinflusst von der international anerkannten Methodik durchgeführt wird. Was die BMJV-Studie aber zeigt, ist, dass es einen Befund gibt, den zu untersuchen sich lohnt. Und das machen Ippoliti und Sanders. Sie gehen einen anderen Weg als die Unmet Legal Needs Forschung. Das macht ihre Arbeit natürlich spannend. Sie verzichten auf eine Analyse durch Befragungen von AkteurInnen auf Angebots- und Nachfrageseite. Anstelle dessen nutzen sie ökonomische und soziokulturelle Parameter wie das Bruttoinlandsprodukt. Unterscheidungen nach Stadtstaaten und Flächenbundesländern sowie nach alter Bundesrepublik und früherer DDR. Analysematerial ist im Wesentlichen die offizielle Justizstatistik. Die zeigt natürlich nur den Ausschnitt der zivilrechtlichen Streitigkeiten, die tatsächlich bei den Gerichten angekommen sind. Diese Einschränkung sollte man im Hinterkopf behalten, wenn man sich die Ergebnisse der Arbeit von Ippoliti und Sanders genauer anschaut. Was sind denn die Ergebnisse, zu denen Ippoliti und Sanders gelangen? Ich kann hier nur wenige anreißen. Einmal können sie mit ihrer Methodik die Hypothese untermauern, dass das Vertrauen in die Ziviljustiz sinkt, wenn Verfahren länger dauern. Wobei die AutorInnen wohl wiederum von der Hypothese ausgehen, dass sich das Vertrauen in die Justiz in der Anzahl der Verfahren widerspiegelt, die Individuen und Unternehmen vor die Ziviljustiz bringen. Mehr Verfahren gleich mehr Vertrauen. Zwei weitere Hypothesen, die Sanders und Ippoliti bestätigt finden durch ihre Analyse der Justizstatistik: Je höher die Arbeitslosigkeit, desto höher die Nachfrage nach Streitlösung durch die Justiz. Und je höher das Bruttoinlandsprodukt je Einwohnerin, desto geringer die Nachfrage nach Justiz. Das macht neugierig auf weitere Detailforschungen. Die Untersuchung findet außerdem Belege für die These, dass soziokulturelle Werte die Bereitschaft beeinflussen, einen Rechtsstreit vor ein Gericht zu bringen. Das zeigen die AutorInnen anhand eines Vergleichs von Daten der alten mit Daten der neuen Bundesländer. Ippoliti, Sanders zeigen, dass ihre Hypothesen über die Treiber, Performance der Gerichte, ökonomische Entwicklung und soziokulturelle Unterschiede Erklärungen für Veränderungen der Streitlust vor Gerichten geben können. Aber so plausibel die Ergebnisse sind, sie zeigen nicht insgesamt den Demand for Justice in der Gesellschaft, sondern eben nur die Nachfrage nach Entscheidungen der Zivilgerichte, was die AutorInnen im Kapitel Limits and Alternative Explanations auch selbst betonen. Am Ende betonen sie, ihre Ergebnisse zeigen, dass die Rechtspolitik in Deutschland einen richtigen Weg eingeschlagen hat, als sie begonnen hat, Gerichte fachlich zu stärken und mehr Spezialkammern einzurichten. Aber die wichtigste Erkenntnis der Untersuchung ist wohl, für genauere Analysen braucht es einfach mehr Daten, die es siehe oben zurzeit in Deutschland noch nicht gibt. Worin liegt die Stärke des Aufsatzes? Er zeigt uns, abgesehen von den Detailergebnissen, dass es volkswirtschaftliche Erklärmodelle gibt, die es wert sind, in der nationalen Justizforschung genutzt und wahrgenommen zu werden. Das kann die empirisch-sozialwissenschaftliche Forschung, die es hoffentlich bald gibt, dann auch ergänzen. Zuletzt: Es wäre großartig, wenn wir eine Zusammenfassung der Ergebnisse in einer deutschen Publikation lesen könnten. Und wenn ich einen Wunsch frei hätte: Diese Zusammenfassung könnte den gedanklichen Weg vom Blick auf die Wirklichkeit zu den Schlussfolgerungen für die Rechtspolitik auch für volkswirtschaftliche Laien ein bisschen einfacher nachvollziehbar machen. Diese Übersetzungsleistung würde die Rezeption der verdienstvollen Arbeit von Ippoliti und Sanders mit Sicherheit erleichtern. The Demand for Civil Justice in Germany, an Empirical Investigation, ist im International Review of Applied Economics erschienen und kann auf der Seite des Verlags Taylor & Francis einzeln erworben werden. Der Download kostet 39 €. Und nun, nach dem Lesetipp, weise ich noch einmal auf den Sponsor dieses Podcasts hin, Juris, das Rechtsportal. Juris Prelex. Die digitale Gesetzgebungsbibliothek ermöglicht es Ihnen, den gesamten Entstehungsprozess von Gesetzen und Verordnungen intuitiv und komfortabel zu verfolgen. Juris Prelex informiert Sie automatisch über sich abzeichnende Rechtsänderungen. Jetzt informieren und gratis testen unter juris.de/prelex. Das war Werbung. Das war Ausgabe 19 des Rechtsgesprächs-Podcasts mit Kurt Brückmann. In Ausgabe 20 werfen wir wieder einen Blick nach Kanada mit Rissa Revin, die für die DAS das Rechtsschutzversicherungsgeschäft in Kanada geführt hat. Wir sprechen unter anderem darüber, welche Rolle Rechtsschutzversicherungen beim Zugang zum Recht haben. Wie immer freue ich mich über Ihre und eure Kommentare Wenn euch diese Folge des Rechtsgespräch-Podcasts gefallen hat, dann abonniert ihn und gebt dem Rechtsgespräch eine 5-Sterne-Bewertung in der Apple Podcast-App. Bis zum nächsten Mal.